The Arizona desert stretched endlessly beneath the Blackhawks' rotors, a vast expanse of shadow and stone painted silver by the quarter moon. Inside the helicopter's cabin, 5 soldiers sat in operational silence, each lost in the particular meditation that precedes violence. The red glow of the interior lights cast their faces in shades of blood and darkness. Staff Sergeant Evelyn Blackwell sat with her back straight, hands resting lightly on the communications pack between her boots. At 32, she possessed the kind of lean athleticism that came from years of deliberate conditioning rather than casual fitness. Her dark auburn hair was pulled back in a regulation bun, revealing a face that would have been unremarkable except for the eyes, gray-green, like storm clouds over deep water, constantly assessing, measuring, calculating. Across from her, Captain Harrison Garrett stared out the small window, his profile sharp against the darkness beyond. At 55, he carried his authority like a second skin, worn smooth by 25 years of command. Silver had claimed the hair at his temples, but his steel blue eyes remained unchanged from the man who had survived Desert Storm's opening salvos. Those eyes had witnessed things that still visited him in dreams: body bags loaded onto helicopters, soldiers bleeding out while extraction never came, the particular weight of decisions that ended in funerals. Master Sergeant Nathaniel Reeves occupied the position closest to the open door, his 45 years evident in the weathered lines around his eyes. 8 deployments had taught him to read terrain like other men read newspapers, to navigate by stars and instinct when technology failed. His hands moved with unconscious precision, checking GPS coordinates against paper maps one final time. Sergeant Duncan Mitchell, compact and powerful at 35, secured his demolitions kit with the meticulous attention of someone who understood the narrow margin between controlled force and catastrophic failure. 3 tours in Iraq had refined his ability to calculate exactly how much explosive pressure was required to breach a door or collapse a structure. His dark eyes held the particular stillness of men who have learned patience through proximity to violent chemistry. Staff Sergeant Coleman Hayes, the team's sniper, cleaned his spotting scope with movements so economical they barely disturbed the air. At 40, his lanky frame concealed extraordinary physical control, the ability to slow his heartbeat, to time shots between breaths, to remain motionless for hours while calculating wind drift and bullet drop at distances exceeding 1,000 meters. The pilot's voice crackled through their headsets. LZ in 3 minutes. Wind conditions nominal. No detected activity in the insertion zone. Garrett gave the hand signal for final preparations. Each team member performed their practice routine, securing loose equipment, checking weapons, activating night vision systems. The familiar ritual that preceded every mission, the transformation from men into operators. Evelyn's hands moved through her own checklist with professional efficiency. What the others couldn't see was the Sig Sauer P226 concealed beneath her tactical vest, the ceramic combat knife strapped against her ankle, the advanced medical kit that contained surgical instruments far beyond standard field supplies. Her personnel file listed her as a communications specialist with extensive technical training but zero combat experience. The file was a masterpiece of bureaucratic fiction. The dog tags beneath her uniform told a different story. Blackwell, Evelyn, Major, Phantom Division. The Black Hawk descended toward a small clearing surrounded by steep canyon walls, the perfect natural concealment for their insertion. As the helicopter hovered 6 feet above the desert floor, Alpha Squad deployed in practiced sequence. Reeves first, securing the immediate perimeter. Hayes next, already scanning for elevated positions. Mitchell followed, his movements reflecting the controlled precision of his specialty. Evelyn descended with unexpected grace, her weight distribution and balance revealing training that had nothing to do with communication systems. Garrett noticed, filed the observation away, but said nothing. The helicopter ascended immediately, its sound fading into the night, leaving them in the profound silence of the desert borderlands. Establish perimeter, Radio check. Garrett's command was barely above a whisper, carried to each team member through their tactical communication systems. Point secure, Reeves. Overwatch established, Hayes. Perimeter sensors active, Mitchell. Communications operational. Evelyn's voice was professionally neutral, revealing nothing beyond technical confirmation. Alpha Squad moved through the darkness with practiced silence, their night vision equipment revealing the harsh terrain in ghostly green detail. The border region's topography created natural channels for movement. The same features that made it ideal for smuggling also provided predictable routes for surveillance. Reeves led the formation, his desert experience evident in each careful step. Behind him, Garrett maintained operational command positioning, his focus split between immediate threats and strategic objectives. Evelyn kept her assigned position in the center of their formation, but her scanning patterns matched those of experienced combat personnel rather than support staff. Her eyes constantly assessed the terrain, identifying potential ambush points, calculating fields of fire, measuring tactical options with each new ridge and depression they traversed. They had covered 3 kilometers in perfect silence when Evelyn detected the first anomaly. Her specialized equipment picked up brief transmission bursts at irregular intervals, frequency patterns inconsistent with standard border patrol or civilian communications. Military-grade encryption, multiple sources, coordinated timing. She moved forward slightly, tapping Garrett's shoulder. When he glanced back, she showed him the communication display, then hand-signaled, military, encrypted, multiple sources. Garrett frowned. Intelligence had indicated minimal security at the suspected weapons cache. He studied the data for a moment, then signaled for the team to continue as planned. Evelyn's tactical assessment shifted immediately. The signal patterns indicated sophisticated coordination inconsistent with standard smuggling operations. Either their intelligence was severely flawed, or they were walking into something far more complex than expected. As they continued through the narrowing canyon, Evelyn noticed additional warning signs. Disturbed soil patterns suggesting recent movement of multiple personnel. Brush arranged too uniformly along potential concealment positions. The positioning of rocks at key terrain features that could serve as pre-sighted range markers for defensive fire. She moved forward again, more urgently this time, tapping Garrett's shoulder. When he turned, she signaled, possible prepared position, recent activity, multiple personnel. Garrett studied the terrain ahead, seeing nothing unusual in the night vision landscape. He signaled back, continue mission, maintain formation. Evelyn returned to her position, her mind calculating survival probabilities and tactical options. What she couldn't tell him, what operational security demanded she keep classified, was that this mission had been compromised before it began, that every step they took was being observed, reported, fed into a tactical plan designed specifically to destroy them. The canyon walls rose higher on either side, creating a natural channeling effect that any experienced tactician would recognize as a perfect ambush location. Evelyn's communication equipment detected additional signal activity now, more frequent and from multiple sources that appeared to be converging on their position. She moved forward a third time, now with unmistakable urgency, showing Garrett the signal pattern and mapping overlay that indicated they were being surrounded by multiple communication sources forming a closing perimeter. For the first time, uncertainty flickered across Garrett's face. He signaled the team to hold position while he assessed the new information. Reeves and Mitchell moved closer, examining Evelyn's communications data with growing concern. "These are military protocols," Evelyn whispered, her voice barely audible even through the tactical communication system. "Coordinated movement patterns, multiple teams converging." Reeves studied the terrain ahead, his navigation expertise immediately recognizing the tactical disadvantage. The canyon narrows further 200 meters forward, limited exit options. Garrett faced the critical decision point that would define everything that followed. 25 years of command experience created a voice in his head that whispered caution. But another voice, the one shaped by Desert Storm's chaos and Afghanistan's betrayals, insisted on maintaining forward momentum. We proceed with heightened security, Garrett decided. Reeves, find an alternate route that keeps us above the canyon floor. Hayes, move to high ground for overwatch. Mitchell, prepare defensive measures if we need to extract quickly. Evelyn maintained her professional demeanor, but internally cataloged Garrett's decision as tactically unsound given the available intelligence. She began preparing her own contingency plans, mentally mapping escape routes and defensible positions. As Alpha Squad altered their approach to maintain higher ground along the canyon wall, Evelyn continued monitoring the communication signals. The pattern had changed, suggesting the unknown forces had detected their course correction and were adjusting accordingly. The team crested a small ridge that provided visual coverage of the canyon ahead. Hayes deployed his spotting scope, scanning the terrain with practiced precision. Movement ahead, 200 meters, multiple personnel. Garrett took the scope, observing several figures moving with military precision between concealed positions. Their equipment and formation suggested professional training far beyond standard border criminals. "Those aren't smugglers," Reeves whispered, his voice tight with the recognition of danger. Evelyn analyzed their tactical options, each progressively less favorable. "Sir, recommend immediate withdrawal. Signal patterns indicate we're being encircled." For the first time, Garrett acknowledged the severity of their situation with a grim nod. "Agreed. We extract along Route Bravo. Reeves, lead us back to the secondary extraction point. Hayes, maintain rear guard. Evelyn, alert base of our situation and request extraction." As Evelyn began transmitting their emergency protocols using carefully worded brevity codes, the night exploded into chaos. Muzzle flashes erupted from multiple positions simultaneously, front, flanks, elevated positions, creating interlocking fields of fire that demonstrated sophisticated planning. The crack of rifle fire echoed through the canyon, the sound multiplying off stone walls until it seemed the entire desert had opened fire. "Contact front, multiple hostiles." Reeves dropped to a defensive position, his M4 rifle answering with controlled 3-round bursts. Bullets impacted around their position, showering them with rock fragments and dust. The air filled with a distinctive snap of rounds passing close, the sound that separated training from reality. Hayes immediately shifted to sniper mode, identifying and engaging the most immediate threats. "I count 12, maybe more in concealed positions." Mitchell deployed to the left flank, laying down suppressive fire to cover potential movement. "We're boxed in, limited withdrawal options." Garrett assessed their rapidly deteriorating tactical situation. The ambush had been professionally executed, suggesting they faced trained military personnel rather than border criminals. Their position offered minimal cover, and the encirclement was nearly complete. "Reeves, find us an exit route. Hayes, priority targets are their communication specialists. Mitchell, prepare smoke for concealment." As the team executed these orders, Evelyn's actions shifted dramatically. With fluid precision that reflected years of advanced combat training, she withdrew the concealed Sig Sauer and began engaging hostile targets with expert marksmanship. Each shot was placed with tactical precision, center mass, controlled pairs, immediate threat assessment between engagements. A hostile fighter appeared at their 3 o'clock, weapon raised. Evelyn's first round caught him in the chest, the second in the head as he fell. The entire engagement took less than 2 seconds. Garrett noticed the transformation peripherally, but had no time to process it as Reeves suddenly cried out in pain, his hand clutching his left thigh where blood had begun soaking through his tactical pants with terrifying speed. "Reeves is hit," Mitchell called out, moving to provide covering fire. Evelyn was already in motion, reaching Reeves with startling speed. She dragged him behind a boulder with strength that belied her size, her movements reflecting training in casualty evacuation under fire. Without hesitation, she applied a combat tourniquet with practiced efficiency. Femoral bleeding controlled, she stated, her voice calm, despite the chaos erupting around them. He needs immediate extraction. The tactical situation deteriorated further as additional hostile forces appeared on their right flank, cutting off their primary escape route. Automatic weapons fire intensified, pinning them down with limited options for movement. This realization triggered something in Garrett that he had fought to suppress for 3 years. Images flashed through his mind unbidden. Iraq, a different ambush, Turner bleeding out while they waited for extraction that never came. The decision to withdraw without him, the body bag loaded onto a helicopter days later. The weight of that failure, carried silently through countless missions since, suddenly became crushing. "We're outnumbered and outpositioned," Hayes shouted above the gunfire, ejecting an empty magazine and slamming in a fresh one. Mitchell deployed smoke grenades, creating momentary visual concealment. "We need to move now or we're finished." The pressure of command under these conditions began fracturing Garrett's combat effectiveness. Past failures merged with present crisis. Every principle he had upheld throughout his career, never leave a man behind, leaders eat last, mission success through unit cohesion, suddenly seemed impossibly distant against the immediate imperative of survival. "Everyone for themselves," Garrett heard himself say, the words emerging from some place of pure panic he didn't recognize. "Head for extraction point Charlie." The order violated every principle of unit integrity and leadership he had upheld throughout his career. It was the sound of something breaking, of 25 years of service crumbling under the weight of trauma never properly addressed. The team's cohesion shattered in that moment. Hayes hesitated briefly before disappearing into the smoke and moving toward higher ground. Mitchell looked between Garrett and the wounded Reeves, conflict evident on his face. Garrett was already moving, his tactical training temporarily overwhelmed by primal survival instinct. He disappeared into the swirling smoke, heading toward terrain features that might provide cover for individual escape. As he vanished, Evelyn's expression hardened with recognition of what was happening. This was the moment her mission had been designed around. The moment when Garrett's carefully maintained professional facade would crack under pressure. Mitchell fired a final suppressive burst, then looked at Evelyn with a question in his eyes. "Can you reach the ridge to the east?" Her voice carried unexpected command authority. Mitchell nodded, his tactical assessment recognizing that splitting their remaining force might actually improve survival odds. "What about Reeves?" "I've got him. Reach that ridge and signal when secure. We'll bring Reeves to you." Mitchell held her gaze for a moment, saw something there that made him nod with sudden certainty, then moved toward the eastern ridge. As Mitchell disappeared into the tactical chaos, hostile fire intensified around Evelyn's position. She maintained suppressive fire with Reeves's M4, her accuracy under stress revealing training that went far beyond communication specialty. 3-round bursts, measured breathing, target acquisition, and engagement in fluid sequence. Reeves looked up at her through pain-clouded eyes, the morphine from her medical kit beginning to take effect, but not yet sufficient to mask the deeper anguish of betrayal. "They left us," he whispered, disbelief mingling with the pain in his voice. Evelyn checked his wound before responding, her hands steady despite the rounds impacting nearby. The tourniquet had controlled the immediate bleeding, but he needed surgical intervention within hours, or infection would become the greater threat. "I know they did," she said quietly, meeting his eyes with an intensity that cut through the morphine haze. "I'm not leaving you. We're getting out of this." She secured her communications equipment and retrieved additional ammunition from Reeves's tactical vest, reorganizing their resources for mobility and defense. The movements reflected training taught only to elite special operations units, weight distribution for carrying wounded while maintaining weapon operation capability. "I need to move you," she told him, her voice carrying the calm authority of someone who had faced worse situations and survived. "It's going to hurt." Without waiting for a response, she lifted Reeves using a specialized fireman's carry technique, distributing his 190-pound weight with perfect balance that allowed for both movement and one-handed weapon operation. As hostile forces converged on their position, Evelyn moved with tactical precision through the battlefield. Her path selection used available cover. Her engagement decisions reflected advanced combat experience, completely absent from her personnel file. Each time hostile forces appeared in their path, she engaged with deadly accuracy, neutralizing threats while maintaining Reeves's security. A fighter appeared from behind a rock outcropping, weapon raised. Evelyn's Sig Sauer barked twice, center mass, headshot, the target dropping before he could fire. She continued moving without breaking stride. Another hostile, this one with better positioning and cover. Evelyn went to ground behind a boulder, set Reeves down with careful speed, then engaged with Reeves's M4. 3 controlled bursts forced the hostile into cover, buying seconds. She used those seconds to reposition, moving at an angle that gave her a shot on the hostile's flank. 2 rounds, target down. The canyon echoed with sporadic gunfire as Alpha Squad disintegrated across the battlefield. Garrett's voice occasionally crackled through the communication system, attempting to coordinate with Hayes and Mitchell. But true leadership had vanished with his first order to abandon unit integrity. Evelyn continued her methodical movement through enemy territory, carrying Reeves while simultaneously collecting abandoned equipment from the battlefield. Each piece she recovered represented both tactical resources and intelligence denial to the pursuing forces. Captain Garrett's tactical pack abandoned near where he had broken contact. 35 pounds of mission-critical materials, maps, intelligence documents, communication encryption keys. She secured it to her gear with quick-release straps. Staff Sergeant Hayes's rifle case dropped when he had prioritized speed over equipment. 22 pounds containing a Barrett M82A1 sniper rifle with advanced optics. She strapped it across her back. Sergeant Mitchell's demolitions kit, left behind when immediate survival overrode all other considerations. 28 pounds of C4 explosive, specialized detonators, and technical equipment that could not be allowed to fall into hostile hands. She secured it to her load-bearing vest. Reeves's navigation equipment scattered when he had been hit. 7 pounds of GPS systems, mapping materials, and reference documents. She gathered it methodically. 92 pounds of equipment total, plus Reeves's body weight. The load would have been impossible for most soldiers. Evelyn carried it with the determined efficiency of someone who had trained specifically for worst-case scenarios. When Reeves lost consciousness from blood loss and shock, Evelyn found a defensible position within a small rock outcropping. She expanded the tourniquet treatment with advanced combat medicine techniques. IV fluids to address blood volume loss, broad-spectrum antibiotics to prevent infection, advanced hemostatic agents at the wound site. She worked with focused intensity, her hands steady despite the adrenaline still coursing through her system. The training took over. Assess, prioritize, treat, stabilize. Combat medicine reduced to its essential components, the difference between a soldier going home and a family receiving a folded flag. As dawn broke across the desert landscape, Evelyn established a hidden observation post overlooking the canyon where they had been ambushed. Through high-powered optics, she observed the hostile forces with analytical precision, documenting their equipment, communication procedures, and tactical deployments. The intelligence gathering revealed forces far more sophisticated than border smugglers. Their weapons were current American military issue M4A1 rifles with advanced optic systems, body armor with NIJ Level 4 ballistic plates, communication equipment that included encryption systems typically reserved for special operations units. More concerning was their organizational structure. She counted 17 individuals, but their deployment pattern suggested a larger operation with these personnel representing only the immediate tactical element. Through her parabolic microphone, another piece of equipment that had nothing to do with basic communication systems, she intercepted fragments of conversation, military jargon, operational terminology, references to timeline and distribution schedules, and one name that made her expression harden with recognition. The hostile force commander emerged from a reinforced structure, his bearing unmistakably military despite civilian clothing. Even at distance, through the spotting scope's magnification, Evelyn recognized him immediately. Lieutenant Colonel Dominic Ashford, officially killed in action, Afghanistan, November 2021. Delta Force, specialized in counterinsurgency operations. Former second-in-command to Captain Harrison Garrett, the man Garrett had abandoned 3 years ago. The man who had survived to build something that went far beyond simple revenge. Evelyn's training maintained her professional composure, but the implications cascaded through her tactical assessment with devastating clarity. This wasn't a smuggling operation. This was a carefully orchestrated operation run by someone with intimate knowledge of American military capabilities, access to restricted equipment, and ideological commitment that made men dangerous beyond measure. She activated her specialized communication equipment, bypassing standard channels to establish encrypted contact with Phantom Division headquarters. The burst transmission lasted less than 3 seconds, compressed data containing photographic evidence, signal intercepts, tactical assessments, and one critical piece of intelligence. Ashford alive, Garrett compromised, mission parameters exceeded, requesting guidance. The response came 90 seconds later, equally compressed. Continue surveillance, document all personnel, protect Asset Reeves. Extraction contingency authorized, your discretion. Primary mission objective unchanged. Identify internal compromise source. Evelyn acknowledged and terminated transmission. She returned to Reeves, who had regained consciousness but remained weak from blood loss. His fever had begun rising despite the antibiotics, infection finding purchase in traumatized tissue despite her best efforts. Situation report, he asked, maintaining discipline despite his deteriorating condition. Evelyn administered additional medication before responding. Her voice carried clinical precision, the detachment necessary to deliver bad news without emotional compromise. Confirmed military operation. American equipment well beyond our mission parameters. Hostile force commander identified as Lieutenant Colonel Dominic Ashford, officially KIA 2021. Multiple indicators suggest internal military connections and specialized intelligence capabilities. Reeves processed this information against his extensive operational experience. This isn't just smuggling. No, this is organized distribution utilizing compromised military supply chains and falsified personnel records. She checked his wound, concern briefly visible despite her controlled expression. The infection is advancing faster than anticipated. We need extraction within 12 hours. Garrett and the others? No confirmation, but I observed evidence of their movement patterns approximately 2 kilometers southwest. They appear to be attempting to return to our last known position. Reeves attempted to rise, but Evelyn's firm hand restrained him. You've lost too much blood for movement. Conservation of resources is critical for survival. Before he could protest, Evelyn's specialized communication equipment detected movement approaching their position. She immediately shifted to defensive posture, weapon ready, positioning herself between the approach vector and Reeves. 3 figures emerged from the terrain, moving with tactical caution. Garrett, Hayes, and Mitchell had managed to find their location, their faces showing the dehydration and guilt of men who had abandoned their principles and were now attempting to recover them. The reunion carried none of the relief typically associated with such moments. As Garrett approached, the weight of his earlier actions hung palpably between them. Evelyn maintained tactical security, her weapon lowered but ready as she continued monitoring their perimeter. Her positioning demonstrated combat experience rather than support personnel protocols. "Reeves, what's your status?" Garrett asked, concern mingled with evident guilt. "Stable, but degrading," Reeves responded. "Infection setting in. Blackwell's kept me alive, but I need medical evacuation." Garrett turned to Evelyn, his expression reflecting complex reassessment. Everything about her, the way she held position, the equipment she had somehow acquired, the simple fact that she had survived and saved Reeves while his experienced operators had scattered, contradicted his understanding of who she was supposed to be. "Good work, Sergeant." Her acknowledgement was minimal, professional rather than emotional. "Sir, I've completed reconnaissance of the enemy compound. The situation exceeds our mission parameters significantly." The team gathered as Evelyn detailed her findings, displaying intelligence gathering and analysis capabilities far beyond communications specialization. She produced a laptop and displayed thermal imaging, photographic evidence, and signal analysis that would have required sophisticated surveillance equipment. "They're being led by Lieutenant Colonel Dominic Ashford," she concluded, her voice steady as she delivered information that made Garrett's face drain of color. "Ashford is dead," Garrett said, but his voice carried no conviction. "Afghanistan, 3 years ago." "Negative, sir. Positive identification confirmed at 0800 hours today." She brought up photographic evidence showing Ashford clearly, unmistakably alive and operational. "Lieutenant Colonel Ashford is commanding this distribution network." Hayes and Mitchell exchanged glances, recognizing the name from operational history but lacking the personal connection evident in Garrett's reaction. "You know him, sir?" Mitchell asked quietly. Garrett's gaze fixed on the distant horizon, memories visibly surfacing. "Afghanistan, Operation Kingfisher. Ashford was my second in command." The words came slowly, each one weighted with 3 years of suppressed guilt. "We were compromised, surrounded, extraction point under heavy fire." The parallel to their current situation hung unspoken in the desert air. "I made the call to withdraw without him. Reporter him killed in action when we couldn't recover his body." Garrett's voice carried the particular hollowness of confession. "Filed the paperwork, attended the memorial service, looked his wife in the eyes and told her he died a hero." The silence stretched, broken only by the desert wind and Reeves's labored breathing. "And now he's here," Evelyn continued, her tone professional but not unsympathetic. "And he knew exactly when and where to hit us. The ambush was precisely planned, professionally executed, with detailed intelligence about our mission timeline and insertion point." She brought up additional evidence, signal intercepts, communication analysis, tactical deployment patterns that suggested prior knowledge of Alpha Squad's operational plan. "Our mission was compromised before we left Fort Carson. Someone with access to our planning provided Ashford with every detail he needed to set that ambush." The implications silenced everyone momentarily. A traitor in their command structure. Their mission sold out before it began. Garrett visibly struggled with this cascade of information, each revelation another weight added to an already crushing burden. After several moments, something shifted in his posture. The guilt remained, but operational focus reasserted itself. "We have 3 priorities," he stated, his voice regaining command authority. "Get Reeves' medical evacuation. Document this operation with actionable intelligence. Identify the internal breach in our command structure." "Evelyn, what extraction options exist given current hostile patrol patterns?" She produced a detailed terrain map, already annotated with observed enemy positions, communication ranges, and patrol schedules. "Primary extraction point is compromised. They've established surveillance coverage on all standard exfiltration routes within our operational area." Her finger traced alternative routes on the map. "I recommend creating a custom extraction at these coordinates." She indicated a position on the eastern ridge, several kilometers from any pre-planned extraction site. Natural terrain features disrupt their surveillance equipment. Patrol patterns show a consistent gap in coverage between 2,300 and 2,315 hours, 14 minutes for helicopter approach, extraction, and departure. It's tight but achievable with proper coordination. Garrett studied her analysis, professional appreciation momentarily overriding his questions about her true identity. The assessment was tactically sound. Communication options for extraction request. Standard channels may be compromised if there's internal breach. Standard channels are compromised, Evelyn confirmed without hesitation. She indicated her modified communication device. I've established secure transmission using phantom division frequencies not included in Fort Carson mission protocols. Hayes and Mitchell exchanged glances that acknowledged what everyone now understood. Staff Sergeant Evelyn Blackwell was operating with equipment, training, and knowledge completely inconsistent with her documented role. The question hung in the air between them, unspoken but unmistakable. Who are you really? But Garrett had reached a decision point. His failures had created a debt he could only repay through action rather than interrogation. We proceed with your extraction plan, he stated. Reeves is priority for evacuation. We continue intelligence gathering on this operation while awaiting extraction. As the team prepared for the long wait until nightfall, Evelyn established a secure perimeter with efficiency that reflected extensive field experience. Her preparations included specialized countermeasures against thermal detection, frequency monitoring systems to track enemy communications, and tactical positioning that maximized defensive options. The sun climbed higher, transforming the desert into a furnace. Inside their hide site, the temperature became oppressive. They rationed water carefully, each person understanding that dehydration could kill them as surely as enemy fire. The hours passed with agonizing slowness. Evelyn monitored enemy communications constantly, building a comprehensive picture of their organization, capabilities, and intentions. What she learned made the situation progressively more grave. This wasn't a simple arms trafficking operation. The scale suggested systematic penetration of military supply chains, sophisticated logistics networks, and distribution channels that reached well beyond the Mexican border. And through it all, one truth remained inescapable. Somewhere in Fort Carson's command structure, someone with significant access had betrayed them all. As afternoon shadows began lengthening toward evening, Evelyn prepared her extraction request. The communication would be brief, encrypted, transmitted in a compressed burst. She looked at Garrett, who met her eyes with an expression that carried both question and acceptance. "When this is over," he said quietly, "we're going to have a very long conversation about who you really are." "Yes, sir," she acknowledged. "We are. But right now, you're the best chance my team has of getting home alive." "Yes, sir, I am." He nodded once, accepting the truth of both statements. As the desert sun touched the western horizon, painting the canyon walls in shades of copper and gold, Evelyn activated her specialized communication equipment and transmitted a message that would change everything. 4 hours had passed since the ambush. 68 hours remained until her self-imposed 72-hour deadline, the maximum time Reeves could survive without hospital-grade medical intervention. And Staff Sergeant Evelyn Blackwell, Major, Phantom Division, had no intention of leaving anyone behind. The desert night descended with characteristic abruptness, temperature plummeting 30 degrees in the first hour after sunset. Inside the hide site, Evelyn checked Reeves's vital signs for the 14th time. His pulse remained elevated at 112 beats per minute. His skin had developed a waxy pallor, suggesting advancing systemic infection, and his breathing carried the shallow quality that preceded shock. 16 hours since the ambush. 56 hours remaining until her extraction deadline. She administered another dose of antibiotics, adjusted his IV fluids, and covered him with an emergency thermal blanket. The fever had broken temporarily, but experience told her this represented the infection gathering strength rather than retreating. Without surgical intervention and hospital-grade antibiotics, Reeves had perhaps 48 hours before sepsis became irreversible. Garrett sat against the opposite wall of their shelter, his M4 rifle across his knees, eyes distant with thoughts he hadn't shared. Hayes maintained watch position at the entrance, his night vision equipment scanning the approaches. Mitchell worked on their defensive preparations, setting motion sensors and tripwires. The silence stretched, broken only by desert sounds and Reeves's labored breathing. The tension wasn't hostile, but it carried weight, the accumulated pressure of unasked questions and unspoken truths. Finally, Garrett spoke, his voice low enough not to carry beyond their immediate position. In Afghanistan, we had intelligence suggesting a Taliban commander was using a compound near Kandahar for weapons storage. My orders were to confirm and mark for airstrike. He paused, the memory clearly painful. We inserted at night, just like this mission. Everything went smooth until we reached the objective. Evelyn continued monitoring Reeves, but indicated she was listening. Turns out our intelligence was wrong. The compound wasn't weapons storage, it was a meeting location. We stumbled into a gathering of about 40 Taliban fighters, senior leadership from 3 provinces. Garrett's hands tightened on his rifle. We were 6 operators against 40 hostiles in their home territory. Hayes glanced back briefly, having heard fragments of this story, but never the complete account. Ashford was on my left flank when they spotted us. Firefight erupted instantly. We broke contact, moved toward our extraction point, but they pursued with everything they had. We were taking casualties, running low on ammunition, and the extraction helicopter was still 8 minutes out. The desert winds shifted, carrying the scent of creosote and dust through their position. I had to make a choice. We could hold position, try to defend until extraction arrived, probably lose half the team. Or we could move immediately, use speed and terrain to break contact, leave Ashford behind to provide covering fire, and extract him on a second pass. Garrett's voice dropped to barely audible. I chose the second option. The helicopter never made that second pass, Evelyn said quietly, stating fact rather than asking. Taliban had already moved anti-aircraft systems into position. Second approach would have meant losing the helicopter and everyone aboard. Command made the call to abort. By the time we could organize a recovery operation 3 days later, we found blood, evidence of heavy fighting, but no body. He met Evelyn's eyes. I filed the report, Ashford killed in action. I believed it, wanted to believe it, because the alternative meant I had left a man behind who might have survived. And now he's here, running weapons to the same kind of fighters who captured him, Evelyn completed the thought. Poetic justice from his perspective. Mitchell finished setting his last sensor and moved closer to hear the conversation. Sir, that was a tactical decision under combat conditions. You saved 5 operators. At the cost of 1, Garrett countered. The math works on paper. Harder to justify when you see his face again 3 years later. Evelyn considered her response carefully, balancing operational security against the reality that this team needed to understand what they faced. 4 days ago, I was briefed by Brigadier General Theodore Lawson, Phantom Division Commander. He showed me Ashford's file, not the official version, the real one. After Taliban captured him, he spent 18 months in captivity, torture, interrogation, isolation. He was rescued during a Pakistani military operation that wasn't supposed to find American prisoners because we had declared him dead. The implications settled over the group like physical weight. The rescued prisoners were turned over to CIA, who confirmed his identity and faced a significant problem. Ashford was officially killed in action. His wife had remarried, his life insurance paid out, his personnel file closed. Bringing him back would require explaining how we abandoned an operator and then failed to mount recovery operations. So they buried him deeper, Hayes said, his sniper's analytical mind immediately grasping the bureaucratic logic. They offered him medical discharge, new identity, financial compensation for silence. Ashford refused. He demanded full reinstatement, public acknowledgement, accountability for the decision to declare him dead. Evelyn's voice carried measured detachment, but her eyes reflected something harder. When they refused, he disappeared from the CIA facility. 16 months later, we detected patterns suggesting former special operations personnel were being recruited for illegal activities. It took us another year to connect those patterns to Ashford. Garrett absorbed this information, each detail another stone added to the burden he carried. How many operators has he recruited? 17 confirmed, all officially listed as killed in action between 2016 and 2023, all with specialized skills: Delta Force, DevGru, Rangers, Army Intelligence, all with reasons to feel betrayed by the system that declared them dead rather than mount recovery operations. That's not just revenge, Mitchell observed. That's building an army. A shadow army, Evelyn confirmed, operating outside official channels, with access to military equipment and training, motivated by ideology rather than money. The weapons trafficking finances their operations, but it's not their primary objective. What is their primary objective? Garrett asked, though his expressions suggested he already suspected the answer. Demonstrating that the system is fundamentally corrupt, that military leadership sacrifices operators for political convenience, that the promises we make, no man left behind, mission first but people always, are lies we tell ourselves. Evelyn checked Reeves again before continuing. Ashford isn't just selling weapons. He's recruiting, building an organization that can expose classified operations, reveal uncomfortable truths about how we treat our own people, undermine public faith in military leadership. The silence that followed carried the weight of recognition. Every person in that hide site had served long enough to see the gap between official statements and operational reality. And our mission, Hayes asked, was designed to draw Ashford into the open, yes, but also to identify how he's getting intelligence from inside Fort Carson. Someone with access to our planning fed him every detail about this mission. That person is still in position, still compromising operations, still getting people killed. Evelyn pulled out her modified laptop, bringing up signal intercepts and communication analysis. During the ambush, I intercepted a transmission. Ashford's people referenced the colonel, confirming our route. That's command-level access to operational planning. Colonel Sullivan, Garrett said immediately, he's the one who assigned you to this mission over my objections. Primary suspect, but we need confirmation. Phantom Division has been investigating internal security breaches for 36 months. 28 compromised missions, 64 operators killed. The pattern suggests someone with broad access to special operations planning across multiple units and theaters. Mitchell's demolitions expertise made him naturally systematic in his thinking. If Sullivan has been compromised for 3 years, that means every mission planned at Fort Carson during that period is potentially compromised, yes. Every operator who deployed, every objective we pursued, every tactical decision we made might have been observed and reported to hostile forces. The implications were staggering. 3 years of operations, hundreds of soldiers, countless missions, all potentially betrayed. There's more, Evelyn continued, bringing up additional files. The level of equipment I've observed here exceeds what Ashford could acquire through black market channels alone. M4A6 rifles are still in limited distribution. The Javelin systems I documented have serial numbers indicating they were shipped to Fort Carson 6 months ago, then reported destroyed during a training accident. Inside supply chain, Hayes concluded, someone's been systematically diverting equipment and covering the losses with false reports. General William Bradshaw, Evelyn stated, displaying service records and logistics reports. He oversees equipment accountability for special operations units across CONUS. He also has access to personnel records and casualty reporting systems. the capability to falsify KIA records that Ashford has been using to recruit supposedly dead operators. Garrett's face hardened as the full scope of the betrayal became clear. Sullivan and Bradshaw, a colonel and a general, working together to support a rogue operation that's arming terrorist networks and recruiting American soldiers. That's the working theory. What we need is proof, communications intercepts, financial records, direct evidence linking them to Ashford's operation. That's why I'm here, not just to observe, but to gather evidence that will stand up to investigation. 22 hours since the ambush, 50 hours remaining. Evelyn prepared for the next phase of her mission. She had documented enemy positions, identified Ashford, and survived with Reeves when the rest of the team scattered. Now she needed to penetrate deeper, to gather the intelligence that would expose the entire network. "I'm moving to the compound," she announced, checking her equipment. Closer observation, possible signal intercepts, photographic evidence of command structure and logistics operations. "That's a suicide run," Mitchell protested. "You'll be operating alone in hostile territory with no backup." "I've been operating alone in hostile territory since this mission started," Evelyn replied without heat. "The difference is now you know it." She turned to Garrett. "Maintain position here. Keep Reeves stable. If I'm not back in 6 hours, request emergency extraction and get him to medical care. And if you don't make it back, then you'll have enough intelligence to brief Phantom Division on what we've found. The mission continues regardless of individual survival." She met his eyes directly. "That's how this works. Mission accomplishment over personal safety. You know that." Garrett absorbed the implicit criticism without visible reaction. "You're right, but I'm done abandoning people." He stood, checking his own equipment. "I'm coming with you." "Sir, you're compromised. Ashford knows your face, your tactics, your decision-making patterns. You're a liability on close reconnaissance." "Then I'll provide overwatch and extraction support. You go in, I maintain observation from standoff distance, ready to provide covering fire if things go wrong." His tone carried command authority, but also something new, humility born from recent failure. "I won't let you go in alone." Evelyn considered the tactical implications. Having backup would improve her survival odds, and Garrett's motivation to prove himself might override the potential compromise his presence represented. "Overwatch only. You maintain position at least 800 meters from the compound perimeter. No movement, no engagement unless I specifically request support. Clear?" "Clear." She turned to Hayes and Mitchell. "You two maintain security here. Reeves needs continuous monitoring. If his condition deteriorates, you have authorization codes to request emergency medical extraction using my communication equipment." She provided them with encryption keys and authentication protocols, information that confirmed beyond any doubt that she operated with authority far exceeding a staff sergeant's normal clearance. 24 hours since the ambush, 48 hours remaining. Evelyn and Garrett moved through the desert darkness with careful precision. Their route utilized terrain features to minimize silhouette visibility, avoiding ridge lines and choosing paths that kept them below visual horizons. Garrett had spent 25 years developing tactical movement skills, but watching Evelyn navigate hostile territory revealed training beyond even his extensive experience. She selected routes that provided multiple escape options, identified potential ambush locations with barely a glance, and maintained such precise noise discipline that even 3 feet away her movements were nearly inaudible. They covered 4 kilometers in 70 minutes, reaching a position on elevated terrain that provided observation of Ashford's compound while maintaining sufficient distance for safety. Garrett established overwatch with his rifle while Evelyn prepared her surveillance equipment. Through high-powered optics and specialized sensors, the compound revealed itself in detail that spoke to significant operational investment. The facility occupied approximately 4 acres, with 3 main structures arranged around a central courtyard. Guard positions were professionally positioned, overlapping fields of fire without creating friendly fire risks. Vehicle parking areas showed tactical organization rather than civilian randomness. Evelyn documented everything with methodical precision: personnel movements, shift changes, equipment types, tactical procedures. Each observation added detail to her intelligence picture. At 0200 hours, a convoy arrived, 3 vehicles moving with tactical spacing and light discipline that indicated military training. Evelyn photographed the vehicles and occupants as they unloaded crates with careful handling that suggested weapons or sensitive equipment. "Getting delivery schedules and logistics patterns," she whispered to Garrett. "This is part of their distribution network." She activated her parabolic microphone, focusing on the central structure where lights indicated activity. What she heard made her expression harden. "Confirmation from our source that the secondary team will deploy in 72 hours. Ashford's voice, unmistakable even through electronic reproduction. "Colonel Sullivan has provided the complete operational plan, including insertion points and extraction timelines." Another voice, unfamiliar. "What about the first team, Alpha Squad?" Scattered and ineffective, Garrett performed exactly as predicted when pressured. The psychological profile Sullivan provided was completely accurate. "And the communication specialist?" A pause. "Unaccounted for, along with their wounded navigator. Presumed dead or ineffective. Focus remains on the next operation." Evelyn recorded everything, her equipment creating encrypted files that would serve as evidence. But the content troubled her beyond its evidentiary value. Another team, another mission, another ambush plan using intelligence provided by Colonel Sullivan. She shifted her observation focus, documenting the compound's security measures and defensive positions. The compound had been designed by someone with military engineering expertise, fields of fire that covered all approaches, defensive positions that provided protection and mobility. Evelyn spent another 90 minutes in detailed observation, building a comprehensive intelligence picture. At 0430 hours, she signaled Garrett that they would withdraw to avoid being exposed by approaching dawn. The return movement proceeded without incident, both operators arriving at their hide site as the eastern horizon began showing the first hint of sunrise. 32 hours since the ambush, 40 hours remaining. Inside the hide site, Hayes reported that Reeves's condition had remained stable but not improved. The fever persisted. The wound showed signs of infection despite their best efforts, and his periods of consciousness had become shorter and less coherent. Evelyn reviewed her medical supplies with growing concern. She had enough antibiotics for perhaps another 36 hours, enough IV fluids for 24 hours, enough pain medication for intermittent dosing. After that, Reeves would be dependent entirely on his own immune system against an infection that showed every sign of overwhelming his defenses. "We need to accelerate the extraction timeline," she stated, checking Reeves's vital signs again. "His condition won't support waiting until tonight's optimal window. Moving during daylight increases detection risk significantly," Mitchell observed. "Reeves dying here is a certainty if we wait. Detection is a probability we can manage." She activated her communication equipment, preparing another encrypted transmission. "I'm requesting emergency extraction, immediate priority." The transmission went out in a compressed burst. The response came within 90 seconds. "Phantom 3, authentication confirmed. Emergency extraction authorized. Specialized assets repositioning. ETA to your location 18 minutes. Prepare for aerial recovery without landing. Confirm reception." Evelyn acknowledged, then turned to the team. "We have 18 minutes to prepare Reeves for aerial extraction and establish defensive perimeter. They're sending a specialized recovery aircraft that won't land. We'll use aerial platform recovery." "That's military-grade equipment," Garrett observed. "Not standard for any unit I know." Phantom Division has access to specialized assets for exactly these situations. She began preparing Reeves, securing him to a litter with specific attachment points designed for aerial recovery systems. The aircraft will maintain hover while deploying recovery lines. We secure Reeves first, then personnel follow. 34 hours since the ambush, 38 hours remaining. The team worked with urgent efficiency. Mitchell established perimeter security. Hayes moved to elevated observation to watch for approaching threats. Garrett assisted Evelyn with preparing their equipment and Reeves for immediate extraction. Reeves drifted in and out of consciousness, the fever creating moments of clarity mixed with delirious confusion. During one lucid moment, he grasped Evelyn's arm with surprising strength. "My daughter," he whispered, his voice urgent despite its weakness. "Melissa, she's 12. Tell her—" "You'll tell her yourself, Sergeant," Evelyn interrupted firmly. "That's an order. You survive this, you go home, and you tell her whatever you need to tell her in person. If I don't, you will, because I didn't carry you out of that ambush just to lose you to an infection in a hide site. You're going to survive, you're going to recover, and you're going to be there when she graduates high school." Evelyn's voice carried absolute certainty. "Do you understand me?" Reeves held her gaze, saw something there that cut through the fever and pain, a determination so complete it left no room for alternative outcomes. "Yes, ma'am," he whispered. "Good. Now conserve your strength. Extraction is coming." 14 minutes. Hayes's voice came through the communication system, calm but urgent. "Movement detected. Northeast approach, approximately 1 kilometer. 4 personnel, tactical formation, moving toward our position." "How long until they reach effective engagement range?" Evelyn asked, her hands never stopping their preparation work. 8 minutes at current pace. The timeline had just become impossible. Extension in 14 minutes, hostile forces in 8 minutes. They would be exposed and vulnerable for at least 6 minutes while the aircraft conducted recovery operations. Evelyn made her decision with cold calculation. "Mitchell, establish blocking position northeast. Delay that patrol. Do not engage unless absolutely necessary. We need 6 minutes of delay." "Understood." Mitchell gathered his equipment and moved out immediately. "Hayes, maintain overwatch. Priority targets are anyone with communication equipment or heavy weapons." "Copy." "Garrett, help me finish preparing Reeves. Then we establish defensive positions to protect the extraction site." 12 minutes to extraction. The desert landscape had begun showing the first light of approaching dawn. That dangerous transition period when night vision became less effective, but natural light remained insufficient. The time when ambushes succeeded and defensive positions became visible. Evelyn worked with focused intensity, her training allowing her to compartmentalize the approaching danger while completing the critical preparation work. Reeves needed to be secured properly, or the aerial recovery could kill him as surely as the infection. 8 minutes to extraction. Hostile patrol 400 meters out. Mitchell's voice came through the communications system. "Patrol has halted. They're establishing observation position. It appears they've detected something but haven't identified our exact location yet. A small advantage but critical. If the patrol remained uncertain, they might hesitate instead of immediately engaging. Continue observation. Report any movement toward us." 6 minutes to extraction. The sound came first, a deep, rhythmic thrumming that was almost subsonic, more felt than heard. The aircraft approached using terrain masking, staying below ridge lines to avoid detection until the last possible moment. 4 minutes to extraction. The aircraft appeared suddenly, rising from behind the western ridge with startling speed. Its configuration was unlike standard military helicopters, sleeker, with unusual rotor arrangements and what appeared to be active noise cancellation systems. The machine represented technology that officially didn't exist. Mitchell's voice carried new urgency. "Patrol is moving. They've identified the aircraft. 300 meters and closing. Hayes, engage. Priority is buying time, not eliminating threats." The distinctive crack of Hayes's rifle split the morning air. 800 meters away, dirt erupted near the approaching patrol, the round deliberately placed to make them seek cover rather than kill. The patrol immediately went to ground, their training overriding aggression when faced with precision fire from unknown positions. 2 minutes to extraction. The aircraft established hover 50 feet above their position, rotor wash creating a miniature sandstorm that reduced visibility and filled the air with stinging particles. From the open door, specialized equipment deployed, an aerial recovery platform with attachment points designed for rapid evacuation. Evelyn and Garrett secured Reeves to the platform, their movements synchronized despite never having trained together. Each attachment was verified twice, each safety measure confirmed. "Reeves secure, initiating recovery," Evelyn transmitted to the aircraft. The platform began ascending with smooth precision, lifting Reeves toward the helicopter's cabin where medical personnel waited. The entire evolution took 30 seconds. Mitchell's voice carried controlled urgency. "Patrol has repositioned. They have angle on the extraction site. I can't maintain suppression from current position." "Fall back to Rally Point Alpha," Evelyn ordered. "Hayes, covering fire on my mark." The tactical situation had compressed into those critical moments where training and instinct merged. Evelyn watched Reeves's platform lock into the aircraft, saw the medical team pull him inside, received confirmation that the primary objective had been achieved. "Personnel recovery standby," she transmitted. Garrett moved to the extraction point, securing himself to the descent lines. His movements reflected decades of training, muscle memory taking over when speed mattered more than perfection. Hostile fire erupted from multiple positions. The patrol had been joined by reinforcements, their combined fire creating a dangerous situation. Hayes's rifle answered with methodical precision. 1 shot, 2 shots, 3 shots, each one forcing hostile personnel to seek cover. Garrett ascending, the aircraft crew reported. Evelyn provided covering fire with her M4, controlled bursts designed to suppress rather than eliminate. Every second the aircraft remained in hover increased risk, but abandoning personnel would repeat the failure that had created this entire situation. Mitchell reached the rally point, his movement drawing fire that revealed 3 additional hostile positions. "Hayes, displace now," Evelyn commanded. She secured herself to the final extraction line while maintaining fire, her movements reflecting training that made complex actions automatic. The line tensed as the aircraft prepared to lift. An explosion erupted 30 meters away. RPG round, probably fired from the compound. The warhead missed, but the blast wave buffeted the aircraft, causing it to shift positions suddenly. Evelyn felt the line jerk violently, her body swinging in uncontrolled arc as the aircraft struggled to maintain stability. Below her, hostile fire intensified, rounds cracking past close enough to feel the supersonic passage. Hayes reached the extraction point, securing himself with the speed born from knowing that seconds determined survival. Mitchell provided covering fire. The aircraft began ascending, pulling all 3 operators clear of the ground while still taking fire. The crew chief leaned out the door, his own weapon adding to the suppressive fire. Evelyn felt hands grab her harness, pulling her into the cabin with strength that overcame the wind resistance. She rolled inside, immediately moving to help with Hayes in Mitchell's recovery. Within 20 seconds, all personnel were aboard. The aircraft banked hard, using terrain features to break line of sight with the hostile forces while accelerating away. Inside the cabin, medical personnel worked on Reeves with practiced efficiency. IV lines, monitors, advanced treatment that transformed the aircraft into a flying intensive care unit. His vital signs remained critical but stable. Garrett sat against the bulkhead, his face showing the complex mixture of relief and guilt. Relief that his team had survived, guilt that it had required someone else to lead them through it. Mitchell and Hayes secured their equipment with automatic movements, their expressions reflecting the particular exhaustion that came from sustained combat operations. Evelyn removed her helmet, her auburn hair escaping its regulation bun, her face showing the first signs of fatigue she had been suppressing. 37 hours of sustained operations, carrying a wounded man through hostile territory, conducting reconnaissance, coordinating emergency extraction under fire. She had done what the rest of Alpha Squad couldn't, completed the mission while protecting her people. A figure moved from the cockpit area, his presence commanding immediate attention despite the lack of rank insignia on his flight suit. Brigadier General Theodore Lawson, Phantom Division Commander, his weathered face revealing nothing as he assessed the recovered team. "Captain Garrett," he stated, his voice carrying authority that transcended the aircraft's noise. "Welcome to Phantom Division Operations. Your team will receive full medical evaluation before debriefing." He turned to Evelyn. "Major Blackwell, status report." Garrett's expression shifted through shock to comprehension. Major, not Staff Sergeant. The woman who had saved his team, who had demonstrated combat capabilities beyond his own. She outranked him. "Sir, primary objective achieved," Evelyn reported with professional precision. "Asset Reeves secured and receiving medical treatment. Intelligence package compiled documenting hostile operations, command structure, equipment inventory, and internal security compromise. Lieutenant Colonel Ashford confirmed operational. Suspect identification completed for Colonel Sullivan and General Bradshaw as internal compromise sources." Lawson's expression revealed nothing, but something in his posture suggested this confirmed existing intelligence. Evidence sufficient for action? Communication intercepts, photographic documentation, signal analysis, and tactical assessment all support prosecution under UCMJ and federal statutes. Additional evidence available through continued surveillance and potential approach of Ashford for cooperation. "Outstanding work, Major." He glanced at Garrett. "Captain, you and your team will be transported to Echo Base, our operational facility in northern Arizona. Medical treatment, debriefing, and full briefing on Phantom Division operations will proceed according to established protocols." The aircraft banked again, settling into a flight path that would take them to a facility that existed outside standard military organizational charts. Garrett looked at Evelyn with an expression that mixed respect, confusion, and dawning understanding that nothing about this mission had been what he believed. "You were never really part of my team," he said quietly. "No, sir. I was assigned to observe your team as part of a counterintelligence operation, investigating internal security compromise. We were bait. You were a legitimate mission with additional operational objectives that required compartmentalized information." Her tone remained professional, but something in her eyes suggested this wasn't easy for her either. "Operational security demanded you not know the complete picture. Reeves nearly died." "Yes, sir, he did, and I made the choice to let the ambush proceed rather than compromise the larger investigation." She held his gaze steadily. "I live with that choice, but I also made the choice to stay with him when you ordered everyone to scatter. That choice that I'm proud of." The silence stretched between them, not hostile but heavy with implications. Hayes spoke from his position near the bulkhead, his sniper's directness cutting through the tension. "She carried Reeves 3 kilometers through hostile territory while collecting our abandoned equipment. She conducted reconnaissance that exposed a shadow army and identified traitors in our command structure. And she coordinated an extraction that got all of us out alive." He met Garrett's eyes. "I don't care what her rank is or what her mission was. She's the reason we're not dead." Mitchell nodded agreement. When it mattered, she was there. That counts. Garrett absorbed this, his team's assessment cutting through his own complicated reaction. They were right. When leadership failed, when the mission collapsed, when survival seemed impossible, Evelyn had been there. "You're right," he acknowledged quietly. "Major Blackwell, I owe you an apology, and my team owes you their lives." "You came back, Captain. You tracked us down, returned to help. That's what matters." Her expression softened slightly. "Leadership isn't about never failing. It's about what you do after you fall." The aircraft began its descent toward Echo Base, the unmarked facility appearing as a cluster of buildings nestled in a mountain valley that standard maps didn't acknowledge. The sun had fully risen now, painting the landscape in harsh morning light. 40 hours since the ambush, 32 hours remaining in the self-imposed 72-hour timeline. But the mission wasn't complete. Ashford remained operational. Sullivan and Bradshaw continued their betrayal. The shadow army of supposedly dead operators still existed, still threatened. As the aircraft touched down and medical personnel rushed to receive Reeves, Evelyn felt the weight of what still needed to be accomplished. Now came the hard part: justice, accountability, resolution, and the confrontation with a ghost who had every reason to want revenge against the man who had left him behind. Echo Base materialized from the Arizona mountains like a secret carved into stone. The facility occupied a box canyon, invisible from aerial surveillance, its structures blending into natural rock formations with deliberate precision. Defensive positions commanded every approach. Communication arrays sprouted from camouflaged installations. The aircraft settled onto the landing pad. Medical personnel surrounded Reeves before the rotors stopped spinning, transferring him to a waiting gurney with coordinated efficiency. Within 90 seconds, he disappeared into the medical facility, leaving the rest of Alpha Squad standing on the tarmac. Brigadier General Theodore Lawson stood waiting, his silver hair military precise, his weathered face revealing nothing. At 62, he carried the particular authority of someone who had spent 4 decades making decisions that determined whether operators lived or died. Captain Garrett, your team will proceed to medical evaluation. Non-negotiable. His voice carried the graveled edge of someone who had issued too many orders. Major Blackwell, with me, immediate debrief required. Evelyn caught Garrett's eye, a brief moment of silent communication. Then she followed Lawson toward the command building. The briefing room occupied the facility's secure core, layers of electronic countermeasures in physical security, creating a space where classified discussions could occur without penetration risk. Lawson activated privacy protocols with biometric authentication. Medical status? Functional. Dehydration, minor lacerations, muscle fatigue. Nothing requiring immediate intervention. She remained standing despite the chairs available. Sit down, Major. That's an order. Lawson's tone softened fractionally. You've been operational for 40 hours straight. Evelyn sat, allowing herself to acknowledge the exhaustion that had been accumulating. Complete assessment, Lawson stated, activating recording systems. Start with mission compromise and proceed chronologically. Evelyn's briefing took 18 minutes, delivered with the precision of someone trained to compartmentalize experience into actionable intelligence. She covered the ambush mechanics, Garrett's leadership failure, her decision to remain with Reeves, the equipment recovery, the reconnaissance that identified Ashford, the intelligence suggesting Sullivan and Bradshaw's involvement, and the emergency extraction. Lawson listened without interruption. When she finished, silence stretched for several seconds. You exceeded mission parameters, he finally stated. Sir, the situation required adaptation. Maintaining rigid parameters would have resulted in Reeves's death and intelligence failure. I'm not criticizing, Major. I'm acknowledging that you made decisions under extreme conditions that required balancing competing imperatives. You saved an operator's life. You gathered critical intelligence. You exposed internal betrayal. He paused. That's exceptional performance under impossible circumstances. Thank you, sir. It also means you made choices that will require addressing. You allowed the ambush to proceed when you could have warned Garrett's team. That decision nearly cost Reeves his life. The words landed with precision, cutting through Evelyn's professional composure. Yes, sir, I understand. Do you? Lawson leaned forward. Because there's a difference between operational necessity and moral comfort. What you did was tactically sound and strategically justified. It was also the kind of choice that haunts operators for the rest of their careers. Evelyn met his gaze steadily. I made the call to preserve the larger mission. Reeves survived. I would make the same decision again under identical circumstances. That's the right answer for this debrief. But when you're alone at 3 in the morning, 6 months from now, remember that it's also acceptable to acknowledge the human cost of necessary choices. His voice carried the weight of someone speaking from extensive personal experience. We do hard things in this division. We make calls that cost people their lives for objectives that serve larger purposes. That doesn't mean we pretend those choices don't carry weight. Understood, sir. Lawson activated his display, bringing up intelligence files that made Evelyn's preliminary assessment look incomplete. While you were operational, we continued developing the investigation. Financial analysis confirmed Sullivan received offshore payments totaling $2.3 million over 18 months. Communication intercepts show regular contact with Ashford using encrypted channels. Bradshaw's personnel record access shows systematic falsification of KIA records, corresponding to known Ashford recruitment timelines. The evidence was comprehensive, damning, sufficient for courts-martial. We also have confirmation of a second operation planned for 60 hours from now. Sullivan provided complete intelligence on a Delta Force team deploying to Syria. Ashford intends to repeat his ambush methodology with a larger force. Evelyn felt cold certainty settle in her chest. More operators, more ambushes, more body bags. We can't allow that mission to proceed as planned, she stated. Agreed, which creates our operational timeline. We have 56 hours to neutralize Ashford's capability, secure Sullivan and Bradshaw, and prevent the Syria operation compromise. Lawson's expression hardened. I'm authorizing expanded Phantom Division intervention, full tactical deployment with objective to capture Ashford, secure evidence, and prevent weapons distribution. Ashford won't surrender easily. He views his operation as ideologically justified, which is why you're going to offer him something he values more than revenge. A chance to expose the system that betrayed him. Public testimony against Sullivan and Bradshaw in exchange for reduced charges and controlled detention rather than black site disappearance. The strategy made tactical sense. Ashford's primary motivation wasn't money or even revenge, it was vindication. He'll want guarantees, Evelyn observed, which you're authorized to provide within specified parameters. Detailed negotiation protocols are in your operational brief. Lawson paused. This mission requires someone who understands both tactical operations and the psychological complexity of dealing with a highly trained operator who has legitimate grievances. You're the optimal choice. What about Captain Garrett? What about him? He has operational history with Ashford, personal connection that could be either advantage or liability. Lawson considered the question. Garrett's leadership failure compromises his reliability under stress. His history with Ashford creates emotional complications. Standard protocol would be to exclude him. But, Evelyn prompted, but you recommended him for advisory role in your preliminary assessment. You saw something worth preserving despite his failure. Lawson's expression shifted slightly. What did you see? Evelyn chose her words carefully. I saw someone who made a terrible decision under extreme psychological pressure, who recognized his failure, returned to help despite knowing he would face judgment, and demonstrated capacity for growth. I also saw someone whose operational experience and tactical expertise could be valuable if properly supported. You're arguing for his inclusion despite the risk. I'm arguing that people deserve the opportunity to recover from failure when they demonstrate genuine effort to learn from it. Sir, with respect, isn't that what Phantom Division represents? A recognition that the conventional military structure sometimes fails good operators, and that alternative approaches can salvage value? Lawson's expression revealed something approaching approval. You're making a persuasive case, but understand the implications. If Garrett fails again, that failure reflects on your judgment. Understood, sir. I accept that responsibility. Very well. Garrett is authorized for inclusion under your operational command. Make clear that you lead this mission regardless of conventional rank structure. 46 hours since the ambush. 26 hours remaining until the Syria mission deployment. Medical evaluation confirmed what Evelyn already knew. Dehydration, exhaustion, minor injuries that didn't compromise functionality. The medical staff provided IV fluids, antibiotics, and strong recommendation for 12 hours of rest. She took 6 hours, sleeping with practiced efficiency. When she woke, her body still protested, but her mind had cleared. The operations center hummed with controlled activity. Phantom Division operators prepared equipment. Intelligence analysts refined targeting data. Communications specialists coordinated with assets in the field. Garrett found her reviewing tactical displays, his appearance suggesting he had also slept and received medical treatment. His expression carried humility that hadn't been present at Fort Carson. Major Blackwell, request permission to speak. Granted, Captain, what's on your mind? I need to apologize for the ambush, for abandoning Reeves, for failing in every way that matters when my team needed leadership. His voice remained steady. I've spent 25 years building a career. I threw it all away in 30 seconds of panic. Evelyn studied him with analytical precision. You're right. You failed. You made a decision that violated every principle you claimed to uphold. Your team could have died because you chose personal survival over unit cohesion. Garrett absorbed this without flinching. But, Evelyn continued, you also came back. You tracked us down, returned to help despite knowing you would face consequences. You acknowledged your failure rather than rationalizing it, and you're here now, asking for the chance to do better. She paused. That counts for something. Does it count enough for you to trust me on another operation? General Lawson has authorized your inclusion in the upcoming mission under my operational command. That means I lead regardless of our conventional ranks. Can you accept that authority? Major, after watching you carry Reeves through hostile territory while I ran, after seeing you conduct reconnaissance and coordinate extraction, yes, I can accept your authority. You've earned it. The admission carried weight, professional pride subordinated to operational reality. Then we worked together. Your operational history with Ashford provides valuable context. Your tactical experience adds capability. Your motivation to redeem yourself creates commitment. Evelyn's tone shifted to command authority. But understand this, if the mission goes wrong, if psychological pressure triggers another panic response, I will make whatever decision serves mission accomplishment and team survival. Can you accept that? Yes, ma'am. Good. Briefing in 30 minutes. Review these files before then. She provided him with access to intelligence materials. The briefing room filled with personnel representing Phantom Division's operational capability. 6 operators with specialized qualifications sat alongside Garrett, Hayes, and Mitchell. Reeves remained in medical care, stable but not yet cleared for duty. General Lawson presided, but Evelyn conducted the tactical briefing. Mission objectives in priority order, she began. Primary, capture Lieutenant Colonel Ashford alive and secure his cooperation for testimony against Sullivan and Bradshaw. Secondary, prevent weapons distribution to terrorist networks currently scheduled for 32 hours from now. Tertiary, gather evidence documenting supply chain compromise and organizational structure. She detailed Ashford's compound layout, security measures, personnel deployment patterns, and tactical capabilities. The level of detail impressed even the experienced Phantom operators. Ashford is highly trained, ideologically motivated, and commanding 17 operators with comparable capabilities. Direct assault would result in significant casualties and likely fail to achieve primary objective. We need an approach that provides him with incentive to negotiate rather than fight. What kind of incentive? one of the Phantom operators asked. What he's wanted for 3 years. Acknowledgement that the military establishment betrayed him. An opportunity to expose that betrayal publicly. We offer him the chance to testify against Sullivan and Bradshaw in exchange for reduced charges and controlled detention. Garrett spoke up. Ashford spent 18 months in Taliban captivity because I left him behind. He's built his entire operation around demonstrating that military leadership abandons its people. Why would he believe any deal we offer? Because you're going to offer it, Evelyn stated. The man he blames for his capture. The commander who filed him as KIA. You facing him, acknowledging what happened, offering him vindication, that carries more weight than any official promise. The psychological insight was sound, but carried enormous risk. I understand the approach, Garrett acknowledged, but we need contingency for the possibility that he tries to kill me on sight. That's where team positioning and tactical preparation become critical. We establish conditions that allow negotiation while preventing immediate violence. Evelyn brought up detailed infiltration plans. The planning continued for 90 minutes, each operator receiving specific assignments. Hayes would provide overwatch with authorization to engage only if Ashford initiated violence. Mitchell would establish blocking positions to prevent reinforcement or escape. Phantom operators would secure perimeter and handle communications intercept. Garrett would approach Ashford directly, with Evelyn providing close support. As the briefing concluded, Garrett approached Evelyn privately. You're taking significant risk putting me in direct contact with Ashford. If I fail again, then I adapt and complete the mission anyway, Evelyn interrupted. But I don't think you'll fail. The first time, you were ambushed by your own psychological trauma. This time, you know exactly what you're facing. You've had time to prepare mentally, and you have clear purpose beyond survival. Redemption through facing the consequences of your past decisions. You have more faith in me than I have in myself. I have tactical assessment of your capabilities balanced against mission requirements. Her expression softened slightly. But I also believe people can grow from failure if they choose to engage with it honestly. You've done that. Now prove it matters. 24 hours until weapons distribution timeline triggered. The infiltration began at 2100 hours, utilizing darkness and sophisticated insertion methodology to position teams without alerting Ashford security. Phantom Division assets included aerial surveillance, signal intercept capability, and rapid response forces. Evelyn led the primary infiltration element. Garrett followed her lead, his extensive experience allowing him to match her tactical precision. They covered 4 kilometers in 90 minutes, reaching positions overlooking Ashford's compound without detection. Through night vision equipment, the facility appeared as islands of heat against cool desert background. Security patrols followed predictable patterns. The central command structure showed thermal signatures consistent with multiple occupants. Hayes, confirm position, Evelyn whispered through tactical communications. Overwatch established, clear sight lines to primary structure. Wind 2 knots from northwest, negligible effect at current ranges. Mitchell, blocking position set, escape routes covered, no movement detected. Phantom elements, perimeter secure, communications intercept active, no indication of alert status. Evelyn checked her equipment one final time, then turned to Garrett. Last chance to reconsider. Once we initiate, there's no turning back. I'm ready. This is something I should have done 3 years ago. Face the consequences of my decisions instead of hiding behind official reports. They moved toward the compound perimeter with careful precision, utilizing blind spots in the security coverage that Evelyn had identified. The approach required technical climbing skills to navigate terrain features while maintaining silence. At the compound's northern edge, they encountered the first security measure, motion sensors designed to detect approach. Evelyn deployed specialized equipment that created false readings, masking their actual movement while the security system registered false positives in different locations. The technique worked perfectly. Within 8 minutes, they had reached the central command structure where thermal imaging indicated Ashford's presence. Rather than attempting covert entry, Evelyn made a calculated decision. She activated her tactical radio on frequencies she knew Ashford monitored. Lieutenant Colonel Ashford, this is Major Evelyn Blackwell, Phantom Division. I'm currently outside your command center with Captain Harrison Garrett. We're requesting negotiation under tactical truce. You have 30 seconds to respond before we proceed with alternative approach. The silence stretched for 15 seconds. Then Ashford's voice came through, carrying controlled tension. Major Blackwell, the communications specialist who turned out to be considerably more capable than her file suggested, and Garrett, the man who left me to die and then filed me as dead. Bitterness edged every word. You have significant audacity approaching my compound with negotiation proposal. I have intelligence you'll want to hear, and an offer that serves your objectives better than continued weapons trafficking, Evelyn replied calmly. 30 minutes of conversation. If you don't like what we're offering, we leave and pursue alternative approaches. And if I simply kill you both? Then Phantom Division operators currently surrounding your compound proceed with assault that results in significant casualties on both sides. Your operation gets destroyed, and you achieve none of your actual objectives. Or you talk with us, learn something valuable, and make informed decision. Another silence, this one extending nearly 30 seconds. Enter through the north door. Weapons visible but not raised. Any indication of attack, and my people respond with immediate violence. Clear? Clear. Evelyn and Garrett moved to the indicated entrance, their weapons held in low-ready positions that demonstrated both capability and restraint. The door opened to reveal interior that combined military functionality with sophisticated technology. Ashford stood in the center of the room, his appearance reflecting 3 years of surviving outside official military structure. At 48, he carried himself with the particular wariness of someone who had learned that trust could be fatal. Gray eyes studied them with analytical precision. His face bore scars that spoke to violent experiences. 2 other operators occupied defensive positions in the room, their weapons trained on the visitors. Major Blackwell, Captain Garrett, Ashford's voice carried controlled hostility. You have my attention for 30 minutes. Use it wisely. Evelyn met his gaze steadily. Colonel Sullivan and General Bradshaw are under Phantom Division investigation for systematic betrayal of American Special Operations personnel. We have evidence documenting their involvement in your operation, their financial compensation, and their provision of intelligence that has resulted in 64 operator deaths over 36 months. She produced a tablet displaying evidence, financial records, communication intercepts, documentation that painted comprehensive picture of command-level corruption. Ashford studied the materials with evident interest, his expression shifting from hostility to calculation. You're offering me Sullivan and Bradshaw. What do you want in return? Your cooperation, testimony against them in proceedings that will be public enough to expose what they've done. Acknowledgement that military leadership systematically betrayed operators and covered up those betrayals. The vindication you've been seeking. In exchange for what? Prison? Execution? In exchange for controlled detention, reduced charges based on cooperation, an opportunity to ensure this kind of betrayal becomes harder to repeat. Evelyn's tone remained professional, but carried conviction. You wanted to expose how the military treats its people. We're offering you that opportunity through legitimate channels rather than selling weapons to terrorists. Ashford turned to Garrett, his expression hardening. And you, Marcus? What's your role in this negotiation? Garrett stepped forward, visibly summoning courage. My role is to acknowledge what I did in Afghanistan, to admit that I made the wrong call, that I prioritized mission over man, and that I left you behind when I should have found another way. His voice remained steady. I can't undo that decision. but I can face you now and accept responsibility for it. You filed me as killed in action, looked my wife in the eyes and lied to her. I did, because it was easier than admitting I didn't know what happened to you, that I had withdrawn without confirming your status, that I had failed you as a commander and as a soldier. Garrett's hands remained visible, non-threatening. I was wrong. There's no justification that makes it acceptable. Ashford studied him with intensity that suggested evaluating whether to accept the apology or reject it violently. The silence stretched uncomfortably. You broke protocol, Ashford finally stated, abandoned a teammate, filed false reports, and you suffered what consequences? Continued your career, earned promotions, commanded more missions. Until 3 days ago when I repeated the same failure under pressure and abandoned my team during an ambush you orchestrated, Garrett admitted. This time someone better than me stayed behind and saved the people I left. She showed me what I should have been, what I failed to be for you. He gestured toward Evelyn without breaking eye contact with Ashford. Major Blackwell carried a wounded operator through hostile territory for 3 kilometers while collecting abandoned equipment and conducting reconnaissance. She did what I couldn't in Afghanistan and what I didn't do 3 days ago. She refused to leave anyone behind, regardless of personal cost. Evelyn remained silent, allowing Garrett to speak his truth. I can't change the past, Garrett continued, but I can acknowledge it honestly and accept whatever consequences you believe appropriate. If that means you reject this negotiation, if it means you want violent resolution, I understand. I owe you that choice. The psychological warfare had shifted. Ashford had prepared for denials, justifications, tactical manipulation. Instead, Garrett offered complete accountability without defense. The unexpected honesty disrupted Ashford's prepared responses. You're different than I expected, Ashford observed. The Marcus Garrett I knew would have rationalized his decisions, blamed circumstances. The Marcus Garrett you knew was someone who hadn't yet faced the full consequences of his choices. I'm what happens when those consequences finally catch up. Ashford turned back to Evelyn. And you, Major, what's your stake in this negotiation? Professional responsibility to complete my mission. Personal conviction that good operators shouldn't be sacrificed to institutional failures. She held his gaze. You were betrayed by a system that valued bureaucratic convenience over operator welfare. Sullivan and Bradshaw personify that failure. But continuing your current operation, arming terrorists, distributing weapons that will kill American soldiers, that doesn't expose the system. It reinforces their narrative that you're a traitor rather than a victim. Public testimony does expose it. Public testimony, properly documented and widely distributed, creates accountability that can't be buried. It forces institutional change. It protects future operators from the same betrayals you experienced. Evelyn's conviction carried through her professional tone. That's worth more than revenge. Ashford moved to the window, staring out at the desert landscape visible in moonlight. His operators maintained their positions, weapons still trained, but their body language suggested they were listening closely. What guarantees do I have that this isn't another betrayal? None beyond my word and the documentation we can provide of Phantom Division's operational independence, Evelyn admitted. We operate outside Sullivan and Bradshaw's authority. Our mission is exposing exactly the kind of corruption they represent. But ultimately, you'll have to decide whether to trust that we're different than the system that betrayed you. The calculated honesty, acknowledging lack of guarantees rather than offering false assurances, carried more persuasive weight. Ashford remained silent for nearly 2 minutes. Finally, he turned back. I want written agreements specifying terms, public testimony and proceedings with media access, reduced charges based on cooperation, detention in military facility rather than civilian prison or black site, and protection for my operators who followed me because they believed in exposing systematic failures. I'm authorized to agree to those terms with appropriate documentation and command approval, Evelyn confirmed. Then we have potential foundation for negotiation. Ashford's expression remained guarded, but suggested genuine consideration. But I need time to consult with my people. This affects them as much as me. Understood. We can... The tactical radio erupted with Hayes's urgent voice. Multiple vehicles approaching compound from southeast. 6 trucks, heavily armed personnel, moving with tactical coordination. This isn't local security, it's an assault force. Evelyn's mind processed the tactical implications with cold precision. Sullivan had learned about their approach, recognized the threat to his operation, and responded with violence designed to eliminate everyone. Ashford, his operators, the Phantom Division team. How long until they reach compound? She transmitted. 4 minutes at current speed. Ashford's operators moved immediately to defensive positions, their training overriding any question about who had betrayed whom. The approaching assault represented threat to everyone, regardless of their prior allegiances. Sullivan's response, Evelyn stated flatly, he knows we're here. He's eliminating the evidence and everyone who can testify against him. Ashford's expression hardened with recognition that his own contact had been compromised, his secure facility's location betrayed by the same colonel who had been feeding him intelligence. My people aren't prepared for assault of this scale. We have defensive positions but limited ammunition and no heavy weapons. Then we defend together, Evelyn decided, tactical necessity overriding any question about prior conflicts. Garrett, coordinate with Ashford's operators on defensive positions. Hayes, priority targets are anyone with heavy weapons or communication equipment. Mitchell, prepare blocking positions on southeast approach. Phantom elements, establish supporting fire positions. The compound transformed into coordinated defensive operation within 90 seconds. Former enemies working together against common threat. Ashford's operators provided local knowledge of defensive positions. Alpha Squad contributed tactical expertise. Phantom Division personnel added specialized capabilities. The approaching assault force revealed itself as professional military operation. Heavily armed personnel in tactical gear, coordinated movement patterns, communication discipline that suggested special operations training. Estimate 24 hostiles, Hayes reported, armed with automatic weapons, at least 2 RPG systems visible, possible explosives for breaching operations. The defensive calculation was straightforward and unfavorable. 15 defenders against 24 attackers with superior firepower. We need to break their cohesion before they establish assault positions, Evelyn assessed. Hayes, engage their command element. Mitchell, disable lead vehicles to disrupt their approach. All defensive positions, prepare for coordinated engagement on my mark. The assault force reached effective engagement range. Their lead elements began deploying from vehicles. Execute, Evelyn commanded. Hayes's rifle cracked from his elevated position. 800 meters away, the assault force's apparent commander dropped. Mitchell's precisely placed explosive charge detonated beneath the lead vehicle. The truck lurched violently, blocking the narrow approach road and forcing following vehicles to halt. Defensive positions opened fire with coordinated discipline, controlled bursts designed to suppress rather than waste ammunition. The assault force responded with immediate violence, automatic weapons fire raking the compound's defensive positions. The firefight developed into sustained engagement, both sides exchanging fire while maneuvering for tactical advantage. Evelyn coordinated the defense with calm precision. Garrett fought alongside Ashford's operators, his extensive combat experience evident. The earlier failure seemed distant, replaced by professional competence under sustained pressure. They're preparing for coordinated assault, Hayes warned, multiple elements maneuvering for simultaneous breach from 3 directions. The tactical situation had compressed to critical decision point. Defending against coordinated assault from superior numbers would result in defensive position being overrun. Evelyn made her decision. General Lawson, this is Phantom 3. Request immediate tactical support. Compound under assault by approximately 20 hostiles with military-grade equipment. Suspect Sullivan-directed elimination operation. Lawson's response came within seconds. Phantom 3, tactical support inbound. ETA 7 minutes. Hold position and maintain defensive integrity. 7 minutes represented eternity under sustained assault, but it also represented hope. All positions, we have reinforcement inbound, 7 minutes. Maintain defensive fire. Conserve ammunition. Do not allow breakthrough. Evelyn's voice carried command authority. We hold here. No retreat, no surrender, 7 minutes. The defenders rallied. Ammunition was rationed with careful precision. Defensive positions were reinforced where possible. The assault force launched their coordinated attack with professional violence. 3 elements moving simultaneously, suppressive fire covering their advance. The compound's defenders responded with desperate intensity. Mitchell deployed his remaining explosives with calculated precision, creating obstacles that channeled the assault into predetermined kill zones. Hayes shifted targets with methodical efficiency. Garrett and Ashford fought side by side, their shared professional background creating unconscious coordination. Evelyn maintained tactical control while engaging immediate threats, her mind processing multiple streams of information simultaneously. The assault reached critical penetration point when specialized munitions destroyed a section of defensive wall, creating breach that threatened compound integrity. Hostile forces moved to exploit the opening, but these defenders weren't standard operators. They were survivors, people who had been abandoned, betrayed, left for dead, and somehow endured. They fought with intensity born from refusing to be victims again. The breach became killing ground as defenders concentrated fire on the narrow opening, creating crossfire that made penetration suicide. Attackers faltered, their assault losing momentum. Then the sound of approaching aircraft cut through combat noise. Multiple helicopters moving with military precision. Phantom Division's Rapid Response Force had arrived. The assault force recognized the tactical shift immediately. Reinforcements meant their numerical advantage disappeared. Their mission had failed, and continued engagement would result in complete destruction. Their commander made rational decision to withdraw. The attackers disengaged with professional discipline, maintaining covering fire while falling back. Within 90 seconds, they had withdrawn completely. The Phantom Division aircraft established perimeter security while medical personnel provided immediate treatment to wounded defenders. The firefight had lasted 18 minutes and resulted in 3 wounded defenders, none critically, and unknown casualties among the assault force. In the aftermath, Evelyn found Garrett and Ashford standing together near the breached wall. Both men showed signs of sustained combat, sweat-stained uniforms, depleted ammunition pouches, particular exhaustion. "We held," Garrett stated simply. "We did," Ashford agreed. They looked at each other with complicated expression that mixed former grievance with newfound respect. "In Afghanistan," Garrett said quietly, "I made the wrong call. I thought I was choosing mission over man. I was wrong. There should have been another way." "Maybe there was. Maybe there wasn't." Ashford's voice had lost some of its earlier bitterness. "What I know is that today, you stood with me when you could have withdrawn. You fought to defend people you didn't owe anything to. That counts for something. Does it count enough for you to accept the negotiation Major Blackwell offered?" Ashford turned to where Evelyn coordinated with Phantom Division personnel. "She stayed with your wounded operator when you ran. She carried equipment you abandoned. She conducted reconnaissance that exposed Sullivan's betrayal. And she just coordinated defense that saved all of us." He paused. "Yeah, I'll accept her deal. Someone like that, I can trust her word." The formal agreement took 2 hours to document. Legal personnel from Phantom Division working with Ashford to specify terms. Public testimony against Sullivan and Bradshaw. reduced charges based on cooperation, military detention rather than black site disappearance, protection for his recruited operators who agreed to cooperate. When the documents were signed, General Lawson approached Ashford with expression that mixed professional assessment and something approaching respect. Colonel Ashford, you made choices I can't condone, but you also survived experiences that would have broken most people. Your cooperation will help ensure other operators don't face the same betrayals. He extended his hand. Welcome back from the dead. Ashford accepted the handshake. General, I appreciate the sentiment, but I'm not back, I'm moving forward. There's a difference. Sullivan and Bradshaw were arrested simultaneously in coordinated operations. The evidence Evelyn had gathered, combined with Ashford's testimony and financial records, created prosecution cases that would result in life sentences. 3 months later, Evelyn sat in the gallery of a military courtroom, watching Ashford testify with calm precision about command-level corruption, systematic betrayals, and institutional failures that had cost 64 operators their lives. The proceedings were public enough to generate media coverage, but controlled enough to protect classified details. Garrett sat beside her, his role in these events documented, but his cooperation noted as mitigating factor. Phantom Division had offered him advisory position in their leadership development program, teaching emerging officers about failure integration, ethical decision-making, and the importance of never leaving people behind. Reeves had recovered fully, returned to operational status ahead of medical predictions. He had testified about being abandoned during the ambush and about Evelyn staying when others fled. His daughter Melissa had attended some proceedings. Hayes and Mitchell continued operational deployments, their experience having deepened their professional capabilities. When the trial concluded with Sullivan and Bradshaw, both convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment, Evelyn walked out of the courthouse into bright Colorado sunshine. Garrett followed her. You changed the outcome, he finally said, not just for this mission, but for how the military handles these situations going forward. That's legacy beyond normal operational success. I did what the mission required, same as you did when you came back for us, same as Ashford did when he agreed to testify. She turned to face him directly. None of us are perfect. We all make choices we regret. What matters is what we do afterward, whether we learn, adapt, and try to be better. Major Blackwell, a voice called. They turned to find Reeves approaching, walking without any trace of his injury. His daughter walked beside him, a 12-year-old girl with her father's eyes. Sir, wanted to introduce you to Melissa. Melissa, this is Major Blackwell, the person I told you about. The girl studied Evelyn with serious assessment, then extended her hand formally. Thank you for saving my dad. Evelyn accepted the handshake. Your dad is a good soldier and a good man. I'm glad he's here for you. He said you carried him when he was hurt, that you didn't leave him even when it was dangerous. Melissa's voice carried the particular seriousness of children who have faced the possibility of loss. Evelyn knelt down, meeting the girl at eye level. He was scared, but he also kept fighting because he had something worth fighting for. She glanced at Reeves, then back to Melissa. You. He told me about you when he was hurt. Made me promise I'd get him home so he could watch you graduate high school. Melissa's eyes glistened. You promised? I promised, and I keep my promises. Evelyn's voice carried absolute conviction. Just like your dad kept his promise to come home to you. The girl studied Evelyn with 12-year-old wisdom that seemed far older. When I grow up, I want to be someone who keeps promises like that. Someone who doesn't leave people behind. Evelyn smiled, a genuine expression that transcended professional composure, reaching something deeper. Then you'll be exactly the kind of person the world needs, Melissa. Your dad would be proud. Reeves stepped forward, his hand on his daughter's shoulder. He already is proud, he said quietly, his eyes meeting Evelyn's with gratitude that transcended words. As they walked away, Garrett observed quietly, You gave that girl something more valuable than saving her father. You gave her an example of who she could become. We all need examples, people who show us what's possible when we refuse to quit, refuse to abandon our principles, refuse to leave anyone behind. Evelyn's voice carried conviction, developed through hard experience. That's what you showed me when you came back. What Ashford showed when he chose testimony over revenge. What Reeves showed by surviving when survival seemed impossible. They reached the parking area where Phantom Division vehicles waited. General Lawson stood beside one. Major Blackwell, Captain Garrett, outstanding work on all fronts. The institutional changes resulting from this operation will protect operators for years to come. He paused. Also, we have new situation developing. Possible security compromise at Fort Benning. Could use your particular expertise. Evelyn met Garrett's eyes, saw the question there. Another mission. Another opportunity to face complex situations. We're ready, sir, she stated with quiet confidence, because that's what they did, what they would continue doing, facing impossible situations, making hard choices, protecting people who needed protecting, and never, never leaving anyone behind. The desert mission that began with abandonment and chaos had concluded with accountability and justice. But the larger mission, protecting operators, exposing corruption, maintaining the principles that made military service meaningful, that mission continued. And Staff Sergeant Evelyn Blackwell, Major in Phantom Division, would be there to see it through. No matter how heavy the burden, no matter how difficult the choice, no matter what it cost. Because some things mattered more than personal comfort or professional advancement or even survival. Honor mattered. Duty mattered. The promise that no one gets left behind, that mattered most of all. 72 hours after being abandoned in the desert, she had proved that promise wasn't empty words. It was commitment. It was sacrifice. It was the difference between what we say we value and what we're willing to die protecting. She had carried 92 pounds of equipment that wasn't hers, and a wounded man who wasn't her responsibility through hostile territory because the alternative was abandoning the principles that gave military service meaning. And she would do it again. Every time. Without hesitation. Because that's what it meant to be a soldier. Not the rank, not the medals, not the recognition. The willingness to carry the weight, to stand when others fled, to face impossible odds and refuse to surrender what mattered. That was the standard. That was the oath. That was what separated those who served from those who merely wore the uniform. And Evelyn Blackwell, along with everyone who had learned from her example, would uphold that standard until the last mission was complete. No one left behind, not ever, not for anything.